I was standing at the altar holding my daughter Linda's bouquet when my life changed forever. 62 years old, newly retired after 40 years of sewing in a workshop in downtown Chicago, and the day of my 28-year-old daughter's wedding had finally arrived. The small St. Michael's Church was decorated with flowers I had chosen, paid for, with half of my life savings. $10,000 that I had scraped together, penny by penny, to make Linda's dream of a white wedding come true. That was when Daniel the groom whispered something in her ear, and I saw her face transform into a mask of coldness. In front of 90 guests, Linda screamed with a voice I had never heard before, "My husband says you're ruining our moment. Get out of here." The silence that followed was deafening. I felt my heart shatter inside, but an inner voice whispered to me, "Lord, give me strength." I didn't say a word. I just grabbed my purse and walked toward the church door. There, right in front of everyone, I took out my cell phone and called the manager of the reception hall. "Cancel it. Everything. I'm not paying for another thing." I walked out of that church with my head held high, but my soul was in pieces. Outside, my neighbor Susan was waiting for me. She had left in tears after witnessing the humiliation. "Sarah, dear, I can't believe what I just saw," she said, hugging me tightly. "That girl has no heart." In that moment, looking at my neighbor's kind face, I realized I wasn't completely alone. But I also knew that my life as a devoted mother had ended right there at that church door. What they didn't know was that this humiliation would be just the beginning of changes none of us expected. My name is Sarah Jimenez, and if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be telling this story, I would have never believed it. I was born in a small town in the Midwest, the eldest of 7 siblings. At 18, I moved to the city to work and get ahead. I met Robert, my late husband, at a textile factory where we both worked. He was 22 and I was 19 when we got married in a simple ceremony at the local parish. Robert was a good man, not rich but hardworking and honest. For 30 years he worked as a mechanic in a garage, and I sewed at home to help make ends meet. We had 2 children, Linda, who arrived a year after we were married, and Michael 3 years later. Robert always said I was the heart of the home, the one who kept everything running while he went out to put food on the table. When the kids were little, I would get up at 5 in the morning. I prepared breakfast, got their uniforms ready, helped with homework, and then I would sew until late at night. On Sundays, I took the children to church while Robert rested. It was a simple life, but full of love, or at least that's what I thought. Robert died 8 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He was only 54. He was fixing a neighbor's car when he collapsed. By the time I got to the hospital, it was too late. The doctor said he didn't feel any pain, that it was instantaneous. But I felt a pain that I thought would kill me. It was as if half of my soul had been ripped away. After the funeral, Linda moved in with me temporarily. She had just finished high school and was working part-time at a clothing store. Michael was 21 and living with his girlfriend Hope in a small apartment near the L train. Linda said she couldn't leave me alone, that it was her duty to take care of me. I felt grateful for the company during those first difficult months, but the months turned into years. Linda was still living with me when she turned 22, 23, 24. She met Daniel when she was 25. He worked in a government office and made good money. I thought they would get married soon, and Linda would finally start her own family. But they continued dating for 3 more years. During all that time, I kept working. Although Robert had left a small life insurance policy, it wasn't enough to maintain the house. So I continued sewing, taking orders for Sweet 16 dresses, clothing alterations, school uniforms. I worked from 7 in the morning until 10 at night every day, except Sundays. Linda contributed to some expenses, but not all of them. She said she was saving for her wedding, that she needed to buy clothes for work, that she had expenses with Daniel. I never said anything to her. A mother doesn't charge her children for living in her house, I thought. Besides, I was happy to have someone come home in the evenings, tell me about their day, watch the nightly shows with me. When Linda announced her engagement, I was so excited I couldn't sleep that night. Finally, my daughter was going to be happy, going to have her own family. We started planning the wedding immediately. Linda wanted something simple, but beautiful. The church, the dress, the flowers, the reception hall, the food, it all added up to more money than I had. That was when I made the decision that now seems so naive. I sold the 2 industrial sewing machines Robert had bought for me years ago. They were my tools, my way of earning a living, but I sold them without hesitation. With that money and my few savings, I managed to gather the $10,000 for Linda's wedding. My daughter. I told her when I gave her the money, "This is the biggest gift I can give you. May you be very happy." Linda cried and hugged me. "Thanks, Mom. You're the best mother in the world. I promise I'll never forget everything you've done for me." The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Linda and I went together to choose the dress, the flowers, we tasted the menus for the hall. It was like when she was a little girl and we played with dolls, but now it was real. I felt useful, important. I was the mother of the bride, making it possible for her daughter to have the wedding of her dreams. Michael was also happy for his sister. He and Hope had decided to live together for the time being, but they fully supported Linda's decision to get married in the church. "Everyone knows what they want," Michael would say. "The important thing is that Linda is happy." A week before the wedding, Linda asked me to go meet Daniel's parents. They lived in a fancier neighborhood than ours, in a big house with a yard. Daniel's mother, Margaret, received me politely, but with a certain coldness. His father, Henry, was friendlier. We had dinner and talked about the wedding, about the couple's plans. During dinner, I noticed Daniel making some strange comments. He talked about modernizing traditions and not getting carried away by obsolete customs. When Margaret asked about the traditions we would follow in the ceremony, Daniel said, "We want to do things our own way without so much outdated protocol." I didn't give it much thought at the time. Young people always want to do things differently, I thought. Besides, the important thing was that Linda was happy, not the details of the ceremony. The night before the wedding, Linda stayed at my house, so it wouldn't be bad luck for the groom to see her before the ceremony. We had dinner together and remembered when she was a little girl, when she would play bride with the bed sheets. "Tomorrow, my dream will finally come true," Linda told me, "and it's all thanks to you, Mom." That night, I went to bed feeling a mix of joy and nostalgia. My little girl was getting married. She wouldn't live with me anymore. She wouldn't be just mine, but it was natural, it was right. Children grow up and start their own families. I had fulfilled my duty as a mother. The wedding day dawned perfect. Blue sky, pleasant temperature, not too sunny, not too cold. Linda looked beautiful in her white dress. I had put on my only elegant dress, a navy blue one I had worn to my niece's wedding years ago. At the church, everything seemed to be going perfectly. The guests arrived on time. The flowers looked beautiful. Father Michael celebrated a lovely ceremony. Linda and Daniel exchanged vows that made them both cry. I was in the front row, crying with emotion and pride. After the religious ceremony, while we were taking photos outside the church, the photographer suggested some family pictures. That was when I noticed the first strange change in Daniel's attitude. When the photographer suggested a photo of Linda with her parents, with me, and with a memory of Robert, Daniel said, "Better just with my wife. We are a new family now." Linda laughed nervously and said, "Oh, honey, one little picture with my mom won't hurt." But Daniel insisted, "My queen, it's just us two now. We don't need pictures with the past." Linda reluctantly agreed. I tried not to feel hurt. It was their day after all. We arrived at the reception hall around 4 in the afternoon. Everything looked beautiful. The tables decorated with flower centerpieces, the 3-tiered cake I had specially ordered the band I had hired. The guests started to arrive, and the atmosphere became very cheerful. As is tradition, I had a special place at the main table next to Linda. But when I got to the table, Daniel said something to the hall captain, and my seat was moved to a table on the side. "We need space for the godparents," Linda explained quickly. "You understand, right, Mom?" During the meal, I tried to enjoy the celebration. I chatted with my friends and with some relatives who had come from out of state, especially for the wedding. But I couldn't help feeling that something was off. Linda barely looked at me, and when she did, she seemed uncomfortable. It was during the first dance that everything changed for good. First Linda danced with Daniel, then Linda with me, as is tradition, and then Daniel with his mom. Everything normal up to that point. But when it came time for the dance with the mother-in-law, when I was supposed to dance with Daniel, he approached the microphone. "I want to thank everyone for joining us on this very special day," Daniel said in a firm voice. "Linda and I have decided that we want to start this new stage of our lives by focusing on our future as a couple. Therefore, with all due respect, we are going to change some traditions that no longer fit with our way of thinking." The room fell silent. I didn't understand exactly what was happening, but I felt a knot in my stomach. Linda was standing next to him with a strange smile on her face. "There will be no dance with the mother-in-law," Daniel continued, looking directly at me. "Linda and I feel it's time to leave behind customs that only serve to maintain unhealthy dependencies between mothers and children." The words hit me like a blow. I felt all eyes in the room turn to me. Susan, who was at the next table, her eyes went wide. Some guests began to whisper among themselves. Linda took the microphone from Daniel's hands. "My husband is right," she said in a trembling but firm voice. "It's time for me to grow up and stop depending so much on my mom. We want to start our marriage with total independence." The hall was so quiet, you could hear the air conditioning. I sat in my chair feeling like I was in a nightmare. I couldn't believe that my daughter, the girl I had raised with so much love, was humiliating me like this in front of all our family and friends. "Besides," Linda continued, her voice becoming harsher, "my mom has always been very emotionally dependent. It's time for her to learn to live her own life without being on top of ours all the time." Those words broke my heart. Emotionally dependent. Me who had worked day and night to give her everything she needed, me who had sold my sewing machines to pay for her wedding, me who had never asked for anything in return but a little affection and respect. I stood up from my chair, my legs trembling. The whole room was watching me, some with pity, others with morbid curiosity. Linda looked at me defiantly, as if she expected me to make a scene or start crying. But instead, I walked to the main table where my things were. I took out my phone and dialed the number of the hall captain. "Excuse me," I said in a clear, strong voice. "I'm Sarah Jimenez, the one who booked this event. I need to immediately cancel all remaining services, the music, the open bar, the cake, everything." The captain looked at me confused. "Cancel. But ma'am, we're in the middle of the celebration." "I'm the one paying," I said, "and I'm the one who can cancel. Calculate what I'll save and you can refund me the difference." Linda came running over. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Exactly what you said, honey," I replied with a calm I didn't know I had. "I'm going to live my own life without being on top of yours, starting now." I headed for the exit. Susan caught up with me and took my arm. "Sarah, don't leave like this. People will talk." "Let them talk," I said. "They've already heard everything they needed to hear." Daniel approached with a panicked look on his face. "Mrs. Jimenez, I think there was a misunderstanding. We didn't mean to—" "There was no misunderstanding, son," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "You two were very clear, and I'm going to be clear too. From now on, you will have all the independence you wanted, total, complete, absolute." I walked out of the reception hall, with my head held high, leaving the murmuring guests behind. Outside, Susan caught up with me again. "Sarah, come to my house. Don't be alone right now." But I needed to be alone. I needed to process what had happened to understand how I had reached this moment. I took a taxi and went back to my house, the house that had been Robert's and mine, the house where I had raised my children, the house where I had sewn thousands of garments to give them a better life. That night, sitting in my empty kitchen, I wondered where I had failed as a mother. At what point had Linda learned to see me as a burden instead of the woman who had sacrificed everything for her happiness? At what point had I stopped being her beloved mom and become her unhealthy dependency? But also, for the first time in many years, I asked myself who I was beyond being the mother of Linda and Michael. What did I want to do with the rest of my life, now that I had no sewing machines, now that my daughter had made it very clear that she didn't need me, now that I was truly alone? That night I cried until I had no more tears left. But when Sunday morning came, something had changed in me. An inner voice, the same one that had given me strength in the church, whispered to me that maybe this humiliation was actually an opportunity to discover who Sarah Jimenez was when no one else depended on her, What Linda and Daniel didn't know was that by freeing me from my role as the sacrificial mother, they had given me something I hadn't had in decades: freedom of choice. And I was about to start using it in ways neither of them could imagine. On Monday morning, the phone rang. It was Linda. "Mom." Her voice sounded different, less sure of itself. "We need to talk." "Mom, we need to talk." Linda's shaky voice sounded strange over the phone. It wasn't the confident, defiant voice from the day before, nor was it the affectionate voice of my daughter from before. It was something in between, something I didn't know how to interpret. "Tell me, honey," I replied, though I felt a knot in my stomach. "It's just that, well, things happened yesterday that maybe shouldn't have happened. Daniel and I have been thinking about what Linda—" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then I heard Daniel in the background saying something I couldn't understand. "Can you come to the house this afternoon? We want to clear some things up with you." I hung up the phone, feeling confused. Clear what things up? Everything had been made very clear the day before. But a part of me, that motherly part that never dies, hoped that maybe Linda had reflected, that maybe she had realized what she had done. I spent the morning cleaning the house, trying to keep my hands busy while my mind filled with memories. I remembered when Linda was 5 and got sick with bronchitis. Robert and I took turns all night to care for her, to give her steam treatments, to give her syrup every 4 hours. One night Linda woke up crying and told me, "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of you just like you take care of me." I remembered when she was 12 and the girls at school made fun of her because she didn't have brand-name sneakers. I worked extra hours for 2 months sewing uniforms until 2 in the morning to buy her the sneakers she wanted. When I gave them to her, she hugged me so tightly I thought she would break my ribs. "You're the best mom in the world," she said. I remembered when she finished high school and wanted to study fashion design, but we didn't have money for an expensive university. I sold my gold chain, the only valuable piece of jewelry I had to pay for her first semester. Linda cried when she found out. "You shouldn't have done that, Mom. I'll find a job and study later." But I insisted, "Studies can't wait, honey. This is your chance." In the end, she didn't study design. After 3 months, she dropped out because she said it was too difficult and started working at the clothing store. She never paid me back for the chain, but I never asked for it. Children don't pay their mothers for fulfilling their dreams, I thought. Me. At 3 in the afternoon, I took the bus to the neighborhood where Linda had rented an apartment with Daniel after the wedding. It was a modest but nice place in a 4-story building with a security gate and a common area. Linda had proudly told me they had 2 bedrooms, a living room, a dining room, and a full kitchen. "I'm finally going to have my own home," she had said. When I rang the bell, it was Daniel who opened the door. He looked uncomfortable, as if he didn't know what to say. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Jimenez. Please come in." Inside, the apartment was immaculate. Linda had put out some of the things we had given them for the wedding. A set of glasses, some embroidered cushions, the microwave her godfather bought her. It looked like the home she had always dreamed of. Linda came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a cloth. She was wearing the robe I had given her for her birthday, a pink one with lace that I had seen at the market and liked for her. "Sit down, Mom. Do you want some coffee?" "That would be nice, honey." While Linda made coffee, Daniel and I sat in awkward silence. He watched the muted television, and I looked around the apartment, noticing every detail. On the dining room table, there were wedding photos, photos where I didn't appear in a single one. Linda returned with 3 cups of coffee and sat across from me. Daniel remained standing as if he were ready to run out if necessary. "Look, Mom," Linda began. "Yesterday things got a little out of control." "A little?" I asked. "Well, yes, more than a little. But you have to understand that Daniel and I have been talking about our relationship with you for a long time." I felt my stomach churn. "What kind of talks, Linda?" Daniel cleared his throat. "Mrs. Jimenez, with all due respect, Linda and I have noticed that, well, that you have always been very, very present in Linda's life. Present how? Very involved in her decisions. Very, how can I put it? Very protective. Linda nodded. Yes, Mom. Daniel has helped me realize that maybe I've depended on you too much my whole life. The words hurt more than I expected. Linda, I never forced you to depend on me. I always told you to make your own decisions. But you never let me face the consequences, Linda replied. You were always there to solve everything for me, to give me money when I needed it to fix my problems. That's what mothers do, honey. No, Mom, that's what overprotective mothers do. The word overprotective hung in the air like an accusation. I had heard that word before from some neighbors when they talked about other moms in the neighborhood, but I never thought they would use it to describe me. Me. Daniel finally sat down. Mrs. Jimenez, we don't want to hurt you, but Linda needs to learn to stand on her own 2 feet. And you think humiliating me in front of the whole family was the right way to teach her that? Linda looked down. We shouldn't have done it that way. I apologize for the way it happened, but the core issue is still true, Mom. What core issue, Linda? That I need to become independent from you, that I need to stop using your money, your house, your emotional energy. Those last words confused me. My emotional energy. Daniel leaned forward. Mrs. Jimenez, haven't you noticed that Linda is always worried about you, that she's always thinking about whether you're okay, if you need anything, if you feel lonely? It's normal for children to worry about their parents, but it's not normal for a grown woman to be unable to enjoy her honeymoon because she's worried her. Mom felt bad about not having the dance, Linda said. I stayed quiet. It was true that I had looked forward to that dance, that it had hurt me when they canceled it, but I didn't know Linda had noticed. Look, Mom, Linda continued, you've always been very good to me, too good. You gave me everything you wanted. You made all the sacrifices. You worked like crazy so Michael and I could have what we needed. And that's wrong. It's not wrong, but I got used to it. I got used to you solving everything, to you always being there to rescue me. And now that I'm an adult, I realize I don't know how to do anything alone. Daniel nodded. That's why we decided it's better to set clear boundaries from the beginning of the marriage so Linda can learn to be independent. And those boundaries, do they include humiliating me publicly? Linda's face turned red. I already apologized for that, Mom. The way it happened was horrible. But the boundaries are necessary. What kind of boundaries? Linda and Daniel exchanged a look. It was obvious they had rehearsed this conversation. Well, Linda said, for example, we're not going to accept any more money from you, not for emergencies or for anything. And if you need help, we'll find a way to solve it ourselves. Second, Daniel continued, visits are going to be more scheduled. It's not that we don't want to see you, Mrs. Jimenez, but we need our space as a couple. How scheduled? Maybe once a week, Linda said. On Sundays, for example, for lunch or something. I felt like they were reading me a list of rules for visiting them in prison. And in emergencies, what kind of emergencies? Daniel asked. I don't know if Linda gets sick, if you need something urgently, if... Mom, Linda interrupted me. You have to understand that I'm not a child anymore. If I get sick, Daniel can take care of me. If we need something urgent, we have phones the internet friends. And if I need something urgent... There was an awkward silence. It was obvious they hadn't thought about that possibility. Well, Linda finally said, I guess you can call us, but only if it's really urgent. And who decides if it's really urgent? Another look between them. We do, Daniel said. In that moment, I understood that this wasn't a conversation to clear things up. It was a meeting to inform me of the new rules of our relationship, rules they had decided without consulting me, rules where I had no voice or vote. And Michael, does he know about these decisions? Linda shifted uncomfortably in her chair. We haven't talked to him yet, but I'm sure he'll understand. Understand what? That it's for the best for everyone, that you also need to make your own life, Mom. You're 62 years old. It's time for you to think about yourself, to do things you enjoy, to have your own social life. And if my social life includes you, it can include us, Daniel said, but it can't be just us. I finished my coffee in silence, trying to process everything I had just heard. My daughter, the girl I had raised with so much love, was explaining to me how I was allowed to love her from now on, with schedules, with limits, with rules that she and her husband had decided. "There's one more thing," Linda said after a while. "Tell me." "We think it would be good for you to seek professional help." "Professional help?" "Yes, like therapy, so you can learn to handle the separation." The words sounded so strange that it took me a few seconds to understand what she was saying. "Do you think I'm crazy, Linda?" "No, Mom, not crazy, but I do think you have trouble letting go. And that's not healthy for you or for us." Daniel cleared his throat again. "My mom went to therapy when my sister got married. It helped her a lot to understand that everyone has to live their own life." "Did your mom have trouble letting go of your sister?" "A little, but now they're doing great. They see each other once a month, talk on the phone every now and then, and each has her own independent life. Once a month." I wondered if that's what Linda wanted for us. See each other once a month, talk on the phone occasionally, and live completely separate lives. "And what if I don't accept these conditions?" I asked. Linda looked at me with surprise. "What do you mean if you don't accept them?" "Exactly that. What happens if I don't accept your rules?" Daniel and Linda looked at each other again. It was obvious they hadn't considered that possibility either. "Well," Linda said slowly, "I guess we would have problems." "What kind of problems?" "Conflicts, arguments, uncomfortable situations like yesterday. And then," Linda sighed, "then I guess we would have to distance ourselves even more." There it was, the implied threat. Either I accepted their rules or I would lose my daughter completely. I stood up from the chair, my legs trembling. "I understand. Understand what, Mom?" "I understand that you have already made all the decisions. I understand that this wasn't a conversation to agree on things, but to inform me how things are going to be from now on." Linda stood up too. "It's not like that, Mom. We want you to agree. But if I don't agree, we hope you'll reflect and realize that it's for the best for everyone." I walked to the door, feeling more alone than ever. At the entrance, I turned to Linda. "You know what hurts the most about all this, honey?" "What?" "That it's not true. That after 28 years of being your mother, you still see my care as overprotection, my love as dependency, and my presence as a nuisance." Linda opened her mouth to say something, but I continued. "And that instead of talking to me when you started to feel this way, you preferred to talk to him," I said, pointing at Daniel, "and that the two of you decided what my place is in your life without asking my opinion." I left the apartment and closed the door behind me. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. For the first time in my life, I felt like a stranger in my own daughter's life. The bus ride home felt endless. I looked at the other women on the bus and wondered if they also had children who saw them as emotional burdens. I wondered if I had really been an overprotective mother, or if I had simply been a mother who loved too much. When I got home, I found a message on the answering machine. It was Michael. "Mom," he said, "Linda told me what happened yesterday, and also what you talked about today. I want to talk to you. Can I come over tomorrow afternoon?" I erased the message, feeling exhausted. I didn't know if I had the strength for another conversation about my flaws as a mother, about my problems with letting go, about my need to seek professional help. That night, sitting on my bed, I took out a box of photographs that I kept in the closet. Photos of baby Linda, at her first communion of Linda, at her high school graduation. In all the photos I was there. At Mother's Day festivals and school plays, at birthdays, at Christmas. In none of those photos did Linda look like an overprotected child. She looked like a happy, confident, loved child. At what point had that love turned into overprotection? At what point had my constant presence become suffocating instead of comforting? Maybe Linda was right. Maybe I did have trouble letting go. Maybe I did need to make my own life. But what I didn't understand was why that meant I had to stop being her mother in the way I had always been. I fell asleep hugging a photo where Linda was 10 years old and hugging me with a huge smile. On the back of that photo she wrote, "For the best mom in the whole world, I love you so much, Linda." I wondered what had happened to that little girl who saw me as the best mom in the world, and I wondered if she would ever reappear. The next day, Michael arrived promptly at 5 p.m. My younger son had always been calmer than Linda, less dramatic, more thoughtful. He was 25 and worked as an electrician for a construction company. He had been living with Hope for 3 years, and although they had never married, they seemed to have a stable and happy relationship. "How are you, Mom?" he asked as I hugged him. "Confused, son. Very confused." We sat in the living room, and Michael looked at me with that serious expression he used to have as a child when he had to tell me he had broken something. "Linda told me everything that happened about the wedding and yesterday." "And what do you think?" Michael sighed. "I think you both made mistakes." "Both of us." "Yes. Linda and Daniel were wrong in how they did it. They shouldn't have humiliated you like that in front of the whole family. That was very wrong." I felt a small sense of relief hearing that at least Michael recognized it had been a humiliation. "But," I asked, because it was obvious a but was coming. "But maybe, just maybe, they weren't wrong about the core issue." And there it was. My other child also thought I had problems. "Do you also think I'm overprotective, Michael?" Michael took a long time to answer, and that pause told me more than any words could. I think sometimes you are Mom. Not all the time, but sometimes." "Give me an example." "Do you remember when Linda failed math in 7th grade? "Yes." "You went to talk to the teacher, the principal. You hired a private tutor. You helped her with her homework every day." "And that's wrong. It's not wrong to help her, but it was wrong that you seemed more worried about her grades than she was." It was true. I had lost sleep over Linda's grades while she seemed to not care. "Or when she fought with her best friend in high school," Michael continued. "You suffered more than she did. You spent the whole week trying to fix things, talking to the girl's mom, looking for ways for them to reconcile." That was also true. I had made appointments with the other mom, prepared strategies for the girls to forgive each other, lost sleep, thinking about how to help Linda get her friend back. "And with me?" I asked. "Was I like that with you too?" Michael smiled. "A little less, but yes." "How do you remember when I dropped out of trade school to study to be an electrician?" "Yes. You were more nervous than I was about the decision. You spent weeks researching schools, comparing curricula, asking everyone if it was a good idea." It was true. I had been obsessed with making sure Michael made the right decision. "But isn't that normal for a mother?" I asked. "It's normal to worry, Mom, but it's not normal for the mother's worry to be bigger than the child's." I fell silent, processing what Michael was telling me. "So what do you suggest, son?" "I think Linda is right that you need to make your own life, but I think she's wrong in how she's distancing herself from you." "How should it be then?" Michael moved closer and took my hand. "Gradually, Mom. With affection, with patience, not with imposed rules or public humiliations. And do you also want us to set boundaries in our relationship?" "I want us to have an adult relationship, Mom, where you are my mother, but I am responsible for my own life." "Don't you think it was already like that?" Michael squeezed my hand. "More or less. But there are things where you still treat me like a child." "Like what? Like when you ask me if I ate, if I'm dressed warm enough, if Hope is taking good care of me. Like when you worry if I don't call you for 3 days. Like when you want me to tell you all the details of my job." All those things seemed normal to me. Wasn't it normal for a mother to worry about those things? And what should I do differently? "Trust that I've learned to take care of myself. Trust that if I need something, I'll ask for your help. Trust that not hearing from me for 3 days doesn't mean something bad has happened to me. And if something bad really does happen to you, then Hope will call you, or a friend, or the neighbors. I'm not alone in the world, Mom." It was true. Michael had his girlfriend, his work friends, his neighbors. He didn't depend only on me for a support network. "Do you think I should go to therapy like Linda says?" Michael thought for a moment. "I don't think you're crazy or anything like that. But maybe it would help you to talk to someone who can help you understand how to make this transition." "What transition?" From being a mother of young children to being a mother of independent adults. That phrase stuck with me. Mother of adults, independent. I had never thought in those terms. To me, Linda and Michael were still my children, no matter how old they were. And in the meantime, what do I do about Linda? Give her space, let her make her own mistakes, and when she needs your help, she will come back. And if she doesn't come back, Michael looked at me sadly, then you will have done the right thing anyway, because true love sometimes means letting go. That night after Michael left, I thought about everything my children had told me. Was it true that I worried more about their problems than they did? Was it true that I didn't know how to let them grow up? Maybe so. Maybe I had confused love with control, protection with overprotection. Maybe I had been so busy being indispensable to them that I had forgotten to teach them how to live without me. But I also knew that everything I had done out of love. None of my sacrifices had been with bad intentions. I had worked day and night to give them the best. I had sold my things to fulfill their dreams. I had put their needs before my own for 28 years. Was that so bad? Was that really overprotection? Or was it simply what a mother does, who loves her children more than herself? That night, for the first time in many years, I wondered what I wanted to do with my life if Linda and Michael no longer needed me. Who was Sarah Jimenez when she wasn't the mom who solved problems, who gave money, who worried about everything? I had no answer to that question, and that scared me more than any public humiliation. 2 weeks passed after my conversation with Michael, and I heard nothing from Linda. Not a call, not a message, nothing. It was as if she had disappeared from my life. Every time the phone rang, my heart raced, thinking maybe it was her, but it always turned out to be Susan asking how I was, or a client asking about a clothing alteration. The clients. That was another worry I had been avoiding. After selling my sewing machines to pay for Linda's wedding, I had no way to work. My savings were running out quickly, and the small pension I received from the government barely covered the basic household expenses. One morning, Mrs. Gable, who lived 3 houses down, came to ask if I could alter a dress for her granddaughter's wedding. "Oh, Sarah, you know nobody sews like you do. Can you hem this dress for me?" I had to explain that I no longer had sewing machines, that I had sold everything. Mrs. Gable was very surprised. "And why is that, neighbor?" I didn't have the heart to tell her the whole story. I needed the money for other expenses, I said simply. "Oh, what a shame, you sewed so beautifully. So what are you going to do now?" It was a question I had been asking myself. What was I going to do? For the first time in my adult life, I had no job, no clear purpose, no children who needed my constant attention. That afternoon, Susan came to visit me, as she had been doing frequently since the wedding. "How are you doing, Sarah?" "I'm getting by, trying to figure out what to do with my life." Susan sat in the living room and looked at me with that worried expression I had learned to recognize. "Have you heard anything from Linda?" "Nothing. And Michael called me 3 days ago, but only to ask how I was. He didn't say anything about his sister." "That girl doesn't know what she lost," Susan said, shaking her head. "A mother like you is not easy to find." Her words comforted me a little, but they also made me think. Was it true that I was a good mother? Or had I been a mother who, with the best intentions, had raised children who didn't know how to be independent? "Susan, do you think I was overprotective with my children?" My neighbor took a while to answer. That pause told me that maybe the question wasn't as easy to answer as I had hoped. "Look, Sarah, you were always very dedicated to Linda and Michael. Maybe, just maybe, sometimes more than necessary." "What do you mean, more than necessary?" "Do you remember when Linda was about 15 and wanted to go to a party?" "Yes." "You drove her, you went to pick her up, and you waited outside in the car all night just in case something happened." It was true. I had done that many times. And that was wrong. It wasn't wrong, but look at my daughters. When they were that age, they came and went alone on the bus. They managed, and nothing bad happened to them. But I wanted to protect them. And you did protect them, maybe too much. That conversation with Susan stayed on my mind for several days. Was it true that I had protected my children too much? Was that why Linda felt incapable of managing her own life without my constant help? On Friday of that week, while I was at the market buying vegetables, I ran into Margaret Daniel's mother. I hadn't seen her since before the wedding, and I got nervous when I saw her. "Sarah," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How are you?" "Fine, Margaret. And you?" "Very well, thank you. How are the newlyweds?" The question hurt because I didn't know how they were. I hadn't spoken to Linda in 2 weeks. "I suppose they're fine," I said. Margaret looked at me with a strange expression. "You suppose?" "Well, I'm giving them their space to adjust to married life." "Ah, how smart. I always tell mothers that you have to know when to step back. Children need to live their own lives without interference." The word interference bothered me, but I didn't say anything. "Daniel told me you had a very mature conversation after the wedding, that you reached good agreements about family boundaries." Good agreements. Is that how Daniel had told his mother about the conversation, where they had practically put me on a visiting schedule? Yes. I said, simply because I didn't want to go into detail. "I'm very glad. Linda is a good girl, but she needed— how can I put it? She needed to become a little more independent from you." There it was again. Independent from me. As if I were an addiction she needed to be cured of. "Well, Margaret, it was nice to see you. Take care." "You too, Sarah. And don't worry, the first months of marriage are always an adjustment. You'll see things will settle down later." I left the market feeling humiliated again. It was obvious that Daniel had told his mother the whole story, probably presenting me as the meddling mother-in-law they had to put in her place. That night, while I was having dinner alone in my kitchen, I made a decision. If Linda needed me to withdraw from her life so she could be independent, then that's what I would do. But not just in the way they wanted, with schedules and rules. I was going to withdraw completely. I wouldn't call her. I wouldn't ask about her. I wouldn't look for her. If she wanted total independence, she was going to get it. But I also decided something else. If I was going to stop being the mother who solved problems, I had to start solving my own. And the first problem was financial. The next day, I went downtown to look for a job. I was 62 years old. I didn't have a college degree, but I had 40 years of experience sewing. Someone had to need that. I went into several clothing stores, sewing workshops, places that did alterations. Everywhere they told me the same thing. "You're too old for this job, ma'am," or "we need younger people," or "we don't have any openings." After 3 days of looking for a job without success, I was starting to get discouraged. My savings were still dwindling, and I didn't see how I was going to keep the house if I didn't get an income soon. That's when I remembered my cousin Letitia. She was 2 years younger than me and had been widowed around the same time I was. But Letitia had done something different after her husband's death. She had moved to a coastal town in Florida to work taking care of an elderly American couple who spent half the year in the States. I hadn't spoken to Letitia in almost 2 years, but I decided to call her. "Sarah." "What a surprise," she said when she heard my voice. "How are you, cousin?" I told her a summarized version of what had happened with Linda and my current financial situation. "Oh, cousin, I'm so sorry. Kids these days are so ungrateful, but you know what? Maybe this is an opportunity for you." "How is it an opportunity?" "Here in Florida, there's a lot of work for women like us. Elderly people who need companionship, houses that need care, families that need domestic help, and they pay well, much better than in Chicago." "But how can I just leave my house, Letitia?" "What do you need it for if your children don't need you anymore? Sell it, cousin. Use that money to start a new life." The idea sounded so crazy that I hung up the phone thinking Letitia had lost her mind. Sell my house. The house where I had lived with Robert, where I had raised my children, where I had all my memories. But that night, lying in my bed, I started to think about Letitia's proposal differently. What was really tying me to that house? The memories. The memories were in my heart, not in the walls, the proximity to my children. Linda had made it very clear that she didn't want me close. And the house was big for one person. Alone. 3 bedrooms. Living room, dining room, kitchen, patio. Electricity, water, gas, maintenance costs. all for a single 62-year-old woman with no fixed income. Over the next few days, the idea of selling the house became less crazy and more practical. With the money from the sale, I could buy something small in Florida, work a few more years to have a better pension, and live near the sea, which had always been my dream. But there was a problem. What would happen if Linda or Michael needed me? What would happen if they wanted to reconcile with me, and I was no longer there? A part of me said that was exactly what I had to do. Be available, just in case they needed me. But another part, a new part that had been growing since the humiliation at the wedding, told me that maybe it was time to think about myself. On the Monday of the following week, while cleaning the house, I found the envelope Linda had given me for my birthday 3 months earlier. Inside was a card with a picture of the two of us hugging, and inside Linda had written, "For the best mom in the world, thank you for everything you have done for me. I love you very much." I read the card, 3 times trying to reconcile the Linda who had written those words with the Linda who had humiliated me in front of the whole family. Which one was the real one? The one who saw me as the best mom in the world, or the one who saw me as an overprotective mother who needed boundaries? Maybe both were true. Maybe Linda really loved me, but she also really needed to get away from me to be able to grow, and maybe I also needed to get away from her to be able to discover who I was when I didn't have children to take care of. That afternoon, I called a real estate agent to come and appraise my house. "This is a good property," he told me after touring it. "Quiet area house in good condition. It can sell quickly if we set a competitive price." "How long would it take?" "If we set the right price, maybe 2 or 3 months." 3 months. In 3 months, I could be living a completely different life on a beach in the Caribbean. Working, meeting new people, being Sarah Jimenez, instead of just being the mother of Linda and Michael. The idea scared me, but it also excited me. For the first time in years, I felt that there was something new waiting for me in the future, something that had nothing to do with being a mother or a grandmother or a widow. The next day, I called Michael to tell him my decision. "You're going to sell the house?" he asked in surprise. "I'm seriously thinking about it, son." "And you're going to move to the beach?" "It's a possibility." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Is it because of what happened with Linda?" "Partly, but not only that. I think it's time I started living for myself." "But Mom, what if Linda wants to reconcile? What if we need you?" It was exactly the question I had been asking myself. "Michael, you already told me that you need me to let you live your own lives. Well, I also need to live mine. But not so far away." "Why not so far away?" "If I'm not supposed to be very involved in your lives, what does it matter if I live here or in Florida?" Michael didn't know how to answer that. "Besides," I continued, "Letitia tells me there's a lot of work there for women like me. Here I can't work in my field anymore and my savings are running out. You don't have sewing machines anymore." That's when I told him about the machines, how I had sold them to pay for Linda's wedding. "You sold your work tools to pay for Linda's wedding?" "Yes." "And does she know?" "I didn't tell her. I didn't want her to feel bad." "Bad?" Michael sighed. "Mom, why didn't you tell us that before?" "Because a mother doesn't charge her children for fulfilling their dreams. But a mother also doesn't have to be left without a job to fulfill her children's dreams." It was the first time Michael had criticized Linda's decisions, and that surprised me. "What do you think of all this, son?" "I think Linda was very wrong in how she handled things, and I think that maybe, just maybe, you're right to distance yourself a little." Distance myself a little, or distance myself completely? "I don't know, Mom. I don't know if moving so far away is the solution." "So what is the solution, Michael?" "To stay here waiting for you to decide if you need me or not, to live off my savings until they run out because I have no way to work." Michael fell silent because he knew I was right. "Give me time to talk to Linda," he finally said. "No, Michael. I don't want you to talk to her for me. If Linda wants to talk to me, she knows where I live and what my phone number is. And if she doesn't call you, then I will have made the right decision to make my own life." After hanging up with Michael, I sat in the kitchen and looked around the house where Robert and I had been happy, where we had raised our children, where we had dreamed of being grandparents together. Selling it felt like betraying all those memories. But I also realized that holding on to that house was holding on to a past that no longer existed. Robert was dead. My children were independent adults who didn't want my constant protection, and I was 62, not 92. I still had time for adventures, to see new places, to be something more than just a mother. That night, I called Letitia again. "Cousin, do you still think there's work for me there?" "Of course. In fact, last week an American lady asked me if I knew someone trustworthy to help her with her house. She pays very well and the house is beautiful 2 blocks from the beach." "What would I have to do?" "Cook, clean, do some shopping. The lady speaks a little Spanish. She's very nice. They come from October to April, and the rest of the year the house is empty." "And in the months they're not there?" "Well, you have free time to do whatever you want. Or you can look for other temporary jobs. There's a lot of tourism here. They always need people." "How much do they pay?" "About double what you would earn in Chicago." That information was what finally convinced me. Not only would it be a new adventure, but it would also be a practical solution to my financial problems. "Letitia, can you help me get that job?" "Of course. Cousin, I'll call the lady tomorrow." I hung up the phone feeling more excited than I had in months. For the first time since Linda's wedding, I had something to look forward to. The next day, Letitia called me with good news. "Sarah, I spoke with Mrs. Patricia. I told her about you. I told her you're very hardworking and reliable. She wants to do a phone interview next week." "A phone interview?" "Yes, don't worry. She just wants to get to know you a little, ask about your experience. It's just a formality." A week later, I had the phone interview with Mrs. Patricia. She was an older, very kind woman who had been coming to Florida with her husband for 5 years. She asked me basic questions about my experience with cleaning and cooking, and she seemed satisfied with my answers. "Sarah, I think you would be perfect for us. When could you start?" "Well, I would have to sell my house first." "How long would that take you?" "Maybe 2 or 3 months." "Perfect. We arrive in October. That gives us plenty of time." After hanging up, I sat in my living room processing what had just happened. I had a job waiting for me in Florida. I had a new future waiting for me. I just needed to have the courage to take the final step. That afternoon, I placed the for sale ad in the local newspaper and online. "House for sale in excellent location. 3 bedrooms, very well maintained, price negotiable." When Susan saw the ad, she came running to ask if it was true. "Really? You're going to sell the house, Sarah?" "Yes, I am." "And you're going to live alone in Florida?" "I won't be alone. My cousin is there, and I'm going to work for a very good family." Susan looked at me as if I had gone crazy. "But Sarah, what about your children?" "My children are adults now, Susan. They don't need me anymore." "And what if Linda wants to apologize? Then she'll have to find me in Florida. And what if you need to come back? Why would I need to come back?" Susan didn't know what to say, but the worry on her face was evident. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. I had made a decision that filled me with peace. It wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't a risk-free decision. But it was my decision. For the first time in a long time, I was doing something for myself by myself. 3 days later, a young married couple came to see the house. They liked it a lot and made me a very good offer. I accepted immediately. "When can you move in?" I asked them. "How about in 6 weeks?" "Perfect." When we signed the preliminary contract, I realized there was no turning back. In 6 weeks, I would be living a completely new life in a completely new place. That night, Michael called me. "Mom, Susan told me you sold the house." "Not yet, but I have buyers." "Are you really leaving?" "I am." "And what if Linda wants to talk to you?" "Son, it's been 3 weeks since we fought. If Linda had wanted to talk to me, she would have done it by now." "Maybe she's waiting for you to take the first step." "I've already taken many first steps in my life, Michael. It's time for others to take theirs." "Can I tell her where you're going?" "You can tell her whatever you want. I'm not keeping secrets from anyone." After hanging up with Michael, I started packing the things I was going to take with me. It couldn't be much because Letitia had told me the apartment where I would be staying was small. I decided to take only the most important photos, a few pieces of clothing, my medications, and the few documents I needed. Everything else I was going to sell or give away. While I was packing, I found the Bible that Robert had given me on our first wedding anniversary. I opened it to a random page and read, "Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here." I felt that those words were written especially for me at that moment. The old things were passing away. My life as a mother, dedicated exclusively to her children. My life as a widow, living on memories. My life as a woman who had no dreams of her own. All those old things were passing away, and something new was coming. Sarah Jimenez was going to discover who she was when she didn't have to be the perfect mother, the problem solver, the one who was always available. For the first time in months, I felt free. There were exactly 2 weeks left to hand over the house when Linda arrived. She didn't knock. She used the key I had never taken from her. I was in the kitchen packing the last of the dishes into cardboard boxes when I heard her footsteps in the living room. "Mom!" Her voice sounded different, smaller, less confident than the last time we had spoken. I came out of the kitchen and saw her standing in the middle of the living room, looking at the labeled boxes that covered almost the entire space. Her face showed complete confusion, as if she had walked into the wrong house. "What is all this?" she asked. "I'm moving," I said in the calmest voice I could find. "You're moving where to?" "To a town in Florida." Linda stood frozen for a few seconds, as if she hadn't understood what I had just told her. "Florida, really? Really? For how long?" "It's not temporary, Linda. I'm going to live there." It was then that I saw something in my daughter's eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. Real fear. Not the annoyance of an adult who thinks her mother is too protective, but the fear of a child who realizes her mother is no longer going to be available. "You sold the house?" "Yes." "When?" 3 weeks ago. I handed over in 2 weeks. Linda collapsed onto the only armchair not covered in boxes. She looked pale. "And you weren't going to tell me?" "What for?" "You were very clear about the boundaries you wanted in our relationship. I thought my move fit perfectly within those boundaries." "But Mom, to Florida." "It's a beautiful place. My cousin Letitia has been living there for 5 years and is very happy." "Your cousin Letitia?" "Yes, the one you met when you were little." "Your Aunt Rose's sister." Linda fell silent, processing the information. I continued packing as if her presence hadn't changed anything in my routine. "And what are you going to do there?" "Work. I have a very good job taking care of a house for an American couple. They pay well and provide housing." "Work as a maid." The dismissive tone in her voice bothered me. "Work at whatever is necessary to support myself, Linda. I don't have sewing machines anymore. Remember." "Why don't you have sewing machines?" There was the question I had been waiting for weeks. "Because I sold them to pay for your wedding." The silence that followed was so long I could hear the ticking of the kitchen clock from where we were. "You sold your machines to pay for my wedding. The $10,000 had to come from somewhere." But I thought you had savings." "I had some savings, not $10,000. Linda put her hands to her face. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to feel bad. It was your special day." "And how are you going to work now?" "That's why I'm moving to Florida. There's work for women like me there." Linda got up from the armchair and started pacing back and forth in the living room, dodging the boxes. "You can't go, Mom." "Why not?" Because this is your house. You lived here with my dad. You raised us here." "Your dad died 8 years ago, Linda, and you are both already raised." "But I need you." The words came out of her mouth with a desperation that surprised me. For 5 weeks I had been convincing myself that Linda didn't need me, that I was a burden in her life, and suddenly here she was saying the exact opposite. "You need me." The same Linda who told me in front of 90 people that I was an unhealthy dependency. Linda started to cry. That was horrible. I shouldn't have said that." "But you thought it—" "I don't know. Maybe. Daniel made me think so. He convinced me that." "Daniel convinced you of what?" Linda sat down again, drying her tears with the sleeve of her blouse. He convinced me that you didn't let me grow, that you were always solving everything for me, and that's why I didn't know how to be independent. And was it true? Linda took a long time to answer. Maybe a little, but I didn't want to hurt you. I wanted to learn to do things on my own. And how has doing things on your own been going? Another long pause. Horrible. Why horrible? Because I don't know anything, Mom. I don't know how the bank works. I don't know what to do when something breaks in the house. I can't cook anything but quesadillas and instant soup. Despite everything that had happened, I couldn't help but feel a pang of tenderness for my daughter. And Daniel doesn't help you. Daniel works all day, and when he gets home, he's tired. He says these are things I should know how to do. What things? Everything. Paying the bills, doing the grocery shopping, making doctor's appointments, talking to the cable company when it's not working. Everything you always did for me. There was the confirmation of what Michael and Susan had tried to tell me. I had been so protective of Linda that she had never learned to do the basic things of adult life. And what did you do before, when you needed those things? I called you, Linda admitted in a small voice. I always called you. And now I feel lost, like I don't know how to be an adult. I sat on the arm of the chair where Linda was. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was talking to my real daughter, not the version of her that had appeared at the wedding. Linda, why didn't you tell me this 5 weeks ago? Because Daniel said it was embarrassing to admit I didn't know how to do such basic things. He said I had to learn on my own without your help. And what did you think? I thought maybe he was right, that maybe I had depended on you too much, but also I was scared. Scared of what? Scared of not knowing how to be independent, scared of disappointing Daniel, scared that you would be angry with me for being so useless my whole life. Linda, you're not useless. Yes, I am useless, Mom. I'm 28 years old, and I don't know how to do anything without help. It was painful to hear that, but it was also honest, and honesty was something we hadn't had in our relationship for a long time. Do you know why that happened, honey? Linda shook her head. It happened because I was also scared. You were scared of what? Scared that you wouldn't need me. Scared that if you learned to do everything on your own, you wouldn't want me in your life anymore. Linda looked at me with surprise. Really? Really? After your dad died, you two were all I had left. The thought that you could live perfectly without me terrified me. But Mom, we'll always need you. Maybe not to solve everything for us, but we will need you. What will you need me for? Linda thought for a moment. For you to advise us when we don't know what to do. For you to take care of us when we're sick. For you to celebrate with us when good things happen to us. For you to hug us when we're sad. It was a different definition of being needed, not as the person who solves problems, but as the person who is there in the important moments. And that's not overprotection. No, that's being a mom. We were quiet for a while, each processing the conversation we had just had. Mom, can I apologize? What are you apologizing for? For the wedding, for the horrible things I said to you, for making you feel like we didn't want you. And Daniel, does he also regret it? Linda looked down. Daniel still thinks we did the right thing. He says maybe the way was wrong, but the core issue was right. And what do you think? I think my husband is wrong. I think there are ways to set boundaries without humiliating people. And I think maybe he doesn't understand what it's like to have a close family because his wasn't like that. That observation from Linda surprised me with its maturity. What was Daniel's family like? Very cold. His dad worked all the time, and his mom was very distant. He's told me he never felt very loved by his parents. And that's why he wants us to have a distant relationship. I think so. I think he thinks that very close families are unhealthy because his family was never close. And you agree with that? Linda took a long time to answer. No, I want to have a close relationship with you, Mom, but I also want to learn to be independent. And you think you can have both? What do you think? It was a difficult question. For weeks I had been thinking that I had to choose between being a present mother and being a mother who allowed independence. I think you can, I finally said, but we're going to have to learn how to do it. Are you willing to try?" "I'm willing, but are you willing to stand up for me in front of Daniel when necessary?" Linda nodded with determination. "Yes. It's my family, and I have the right to decide what kind of relationship I want to have with you." It was at that moment that I heard the door open. It was Daniel. "Linda, I saw your car outside." He stopped in his tracks when he saw all the boxes and the two of us sitting in the middle of the chaos. "What's going on here?" Linda stood up. "Daniel, my mom is moving to Florida." "She's moving, why?" "Because she sold the house and her sewing machines to pay for our wedding." Daniel looked at me with an expression I couldn't interpret. "She sold her machines." "Yes," Linda said. "And now she has no way to work here, so she's going to work in Florida." "Mrs. Jimenez," Daniel said, "I didn't know about the machines." "There was no reason for you to know. And you're leaving because of that." "I'm leaving because I need to work to live, and because you were very clear about the kind of relationship you wanted to have with me." Daniel looked uncomfortable. "Mrs. Jimenez, maybe we were too harsh." "You weren't harsh, you were honest. And I'm going to be honest too. I need to make my own life." "But does it have to be so far away?" It was interesting that now it was Daniel who seemed worried about the distance. "Daniel," Linda said, "can I talk to you in private?" They went into the kitchen and I heard them talking in low voices for several minutes. I couldn't understand everything they were saying, but I heard Linda use a tone I had never heard her use with Daniel before, firm, determined, as if she were defending something important. When they came back, Daniel looked like a scolded child. "Mrs. Jimenez," he said, "I owe you a very big apology." "For what?" "For the way we handled things at the wedding, and for the ideas I put in Linda's head about you." Linda nodded. "I explained to Daniel that I want to have a close relationship with you, that I don't want strict limits or visiting hours or anything like that." "And you agree?" I asked Daniel. "I'm learning that every family is different," he said. "Mine was very cold, but that doesn't mean all families have to be that way." "So what do you propose?" Linda approached me. "We propose that you stay, that you don't sell the house, that you find a way to work here." "With what machines am I going to work?" "We'll buy you new machines," Daniel said. "It's the least we can do after you sold yours for our wedding." The offer moved me, but it also made me think. "And what if in 6 months you decide again that I'm too meddlesome?" "That's not going to happen," Linda said, "because we're going to talk. We're going to tell each other things up front without letting problems pile up." "And what if Daniel starts to feel again that I'm a bad influence?" Daniel cleared his throat. "Mrs. Jimenez, I was wrong. I thought you weren't letting Linda grow. But now I realize that Linda never asked for space to grow. If she had talked to me about her feelings, instead of letting me invent problems that maybe didn't exist, none of this would have happened." It was the most sincere apology I had heard from him. "And the house, I already signed a contract." "Can it be canceled?" Linda asked hopefully. "It can be canceled, but I'd have to pay a penalty." "We'll pay the penalty," Daniel said immediately. "And the job in Florida, I already promised Mrs. Patricia I would work for her." Linda and Daniel looked at each other. It was obvious they hadn't thought about that. Practical details. "Can't you call her and explain the situation?" Linda asked. "I could, but I would have to be very sure that you really want me to stay, not just out of guilt or pity." "We want you here because we need you," Linda said, "not to solve everything for us, but to be our family." "And the machines. We'll go look for machines tomorrow," Daniel promised. "The best we can find." I was quiet for a few minutes thinking about everything that had happened in the last few hours. 5 weeks ago, I had been humiliated in public. 4 weeks ago, I had decided to completely distance myself from my children. 3 weeks ago, I had sold my house. And now they were asking me to cancel all those plans to stay. "I need to think about it," I finally told them. "How much time do you need?" Linda asked. "Give me until tomorrow." That night, after Linda and Daniel left, I was alone in my house full of boxes thinking about the decision I had to make. Staying meant giving my relationship with Linda a second chance. It meant risking being hurt again. It meant trusting that things could be different. But it also meant canceling the adventure I had planned. It meant giving up seeing the sea, living independently, discovering who I was when I didn't have to be a mother all the time. I called Letitia to tell her what had happened. "Oh, cousin, what a dilemma. What do you feel in your heart?" I feel that my children need me, but I also feel that I need something different in my life." "Can it be both?" "How?" "Well, maybe you don't have to stay all the time. Maybe you can stay for a few months, fix things with Linda, and then come visit me for a season." It was an idea I hadn't considered. It didn't have to be all or nothing. "Do you think Mrs. Patricia would wait for me until next year?" "I can ask her, but I think so. She's very nice." The next day, Linda arrived early with coffee and pastries. "Have you thought about it?" "Yes." Linda looked nervous. "And I'll stay, but with conditions." "Whatever you want." "First condition. We're going to learn together how to have an adult mother-daughter relationship. I won't be overprotective, and you won't run away every time you have a problem." "I accept." "Second condition. If at any point you start to feel again that I'm too meddlesome, you tell me directly. No public humiliations, no meetings to inform me of new rules." "I accept." Third condition. Next year, I'm going to Florida for 3 months to see the sea and work with Mrs. Patricia, not to get away from you, but to live my own adventure. Linda smiled. "Can we come visit you?" "Of course, I accept the third condition." We hugged for the first time in over a month. A real hug without resentment, without fears, without conditions. "You know what makes me happiest about all this," Linda told me. "What? That we're finally going to get to know the Sarah Jimenez who doesn't have to be the perfect mother all the time." "And that doesn't scare you?" "A little. But you know what? It also makes me very curious." That afternoon, I canceled the sale of the house and called Mrs. Patricia to explain the situation. As Letitia had predicted, she was very understanding and promised to hold the job for me for the following year. The next day, Alejandro arrived with 2 new industrial sewing machines, better than the ones I had before. "So you can start your new life," he said. "My new life." "Yes, the life where you are our mom, but you are also Sarah Jimenez." I liked the sound of that. Sarah Jimenez, who in addition to being a mother, was also a woman with her own dreams, her own adventures, her own decisions. And for the first time in a long time, the future seemed full of possibilities. 6 months have passed since that morning when Linda appeared in my living room full of boxes, and I can say with peace of mind that we have learned to be a different kind of family. Not better or worse than before, just different. A family where everyone has their place without invading the other's space. Where love is not measured by the number of problems you solve, but by the quality of the moments you share. This morning, I woke up at 6 as always, but no longer with that sense of urgency that accompanied me for so many years. I no longer have to rush to prepare breakfast for anyone but myself. I no longer have to check if Linda has woken up or worry because Michael hasn't called me in 3 days. Now I get up because I want to, because I enjoy those first moments of the day when the house is quiet and the world has not yet fully awakened. I made my coffee and sat in the kitchen to review the sewing orders that have come in this week. The new machines that Linda and Daniel bought me have been a blessing. They are more modern than the ones I had before, quieter, more precise. With them, I have been able to resume my sewing work, but this time in a different way. I no longer sew out of desperate need, but for the pleasure of creating something beautiful with my hands. I have 3 Sweet 16 dresses, pending 2 school uniforms, and several minor alterations. The work is perfectly sufficient for my expenses. Without the pressure of having to support anyone else, it is liberating to work for myself, to know that every dollar I earn is for my own needs and my own tastes. As I sewed the first dress of the morning, I thought about how much things have changed. Linda comes to visit me twice a week, not because she has a scheduled appointment or because she needs me to solve something urgent, but because she genuinely wants to spend time with me. On Tuesdays, she comes in the afternoon and helps me with some housework while we chat. On Saturdays, we go to the market together and then eat somewhere nice. During these visits, I have gotten to know a Linda that I didn't know existed. a grown woman who has interesting opinions about life, who tells me funny anecdotes from her job, who has started cooking dishes she finds on the internet. She is no longer the little girl who came running to me every time she had a problem, but she is also not the cold stranger who appeared at the wedding. She is my daughter, simply my daughter, with whom I can have woman-to-woman conversations. Daniel has also changed a lot. At first I noticed that his visits were more out of obligation than pleasure, but little by little he has relaxed. Now he tells me things about his work, asks for my opinion on decisions he has to make. He has even asked me for advice on how to surprise Linda on special occasions. He has become the son-in-law I always hoped to have, respectful, affectionate, but also independent. Last month, Linda told me they are thinking about having a baby next year. I was very excited about the news, but I also realized that my reaction was different from what it would have been before. Before, I would have immediately started making plans about how I was going to help, what things we would need to buy, how I was going to organize my life to be available to care for the baby. This time, I was simply excited for them and told them that I would be a happy grandmother when the time came. "Don't you want to know the details?" Linda asked, surprised by my calm reaction. "Of course I want to know, honey, but when you are ready to tell me..." "Don't you have any advice to give me?" "Yes, a lot, but when you ask me for it." Linda smiled. "I like this new version of my mom." "New version?" "Yes, the version that trusts that I can handle my own life." Michael has also noticed the changes. He comes to visit me once a week, usually on Sunday afternoons. He brings hope and the three of us chat while I prepare dinner. They are calm visits without drama, without emergencies to solve. Michael tells me about his work, his plans to marry Hope next year, his ideas for the future. "You know what I like most about our talks now," he told me last Sunday, that I no longer feel like I have to report everything I do to you. I can tell you what I want to tell you when I want to tell you. And before you felt like you had to report everything to me. Not exactly report, but I did feel that if I didn't tell you things, you would worry or feel excluded. It was an interesting observation. Apparently, my constant worry had made my children feel the obligation to reassure me all the time, instead of just living their lives. And now I know that if I don't talk to you for a week, it doesn't mean something bad happened to me, or that I don't love you anymore. It just means I was busy. It's funny how perspectives change when you stop clinging to things. For years, I thought that if I wasn't constantly involved in my children's lives, I would lose my place in their hearts. It turns out that the exact opposite happened. When I stopped clinging so much, they approached me in a more authentic way. This new family dynamic has given me something I haven't had in decades, time for myself. Time to think, to read, to discover what I like to do when I don't have to be solving someone else's life. I have started reading novels again, something I hadn't done since before I got married. I signed up for a knitting workshop at the neighborhood community center, where I have met other women my age who, like me, are rediscovering who they are beyond being mothers and wives. It's refreshing to talk with women who understand what it means to raise children, but who also have their own interests, postponed dreams, personal projects. Mrs. Esperanza, one of the ladies from the workshop, told me that after her 4 children got married, she felt completely lost. "I didn't know what to do with myself," she told me. "For 30 years, my entire identity had been being a mom. When they no longer needed me in that way, I had to learn who I was." Her story resonated deeply with me. "And how did you do it?" "Little by little. First I signed up for dance classes, then I started doing volunteer work at a nursing home, then I started traveling with a group of ladies from the parish. Every new thing I did showed me a part of myself that had been dormant." "And how did your children react?" "At first they were worried. They thought I had gone crazy, but then they realized they had a happier, more interesting mom with more things to talk about." That conversation made me reflect on my own plans. The trip to Florida, which I have scheduled for November, no longer seems like a desperate escape, but a well-deserved adventure. Linda and Michael have completely accepted the idea. They are even excited to come visit me during those 3 months. "It will be like having an adventurous mom," Linda says. "I never thought of you that way." The truth is, I had never thought of myself that way either. For so many years I saw myself only as the mother of Linda and Michael, the widow of Robert the neighborhood seamstress, never as Sarah Jimenez, the woman who could also have her own adventures. The other day, while organizing my things for the trip, I found the wedding photos that Linda had given me after our reconciliation. They are beautiful photos where she looks happy, radiant. But what struck me the most is that there are several photos where I appeared genuinely smiling, looking good. "Why didn't you give me these photos before?" I asked Linda. Because I was ashamed. Ashamed of what? Ashamed of having excluded you from the official family photos. These were taken by Daniel's sister with her personal camera. I looked at the photos again. It was obvious that they had been taken during the genuine moments of joy before the problem started. In these photos, you could see the family we really were, not the dysfunctional family they tried to create that night. "I like this version of the wedding better," I told her. "Me too. You know what I like most about these photos? What? That you can see we were all genuinely happy. That when we weren't trying to meet expectations or create artificial boundaries, we were simply a family that loves each other." Linda nodded. I wish I had remembered that before listening to so much advice about what an independent married woman should be. It's interesting how external influences can distort relationships that work well. Daniel, with the best intentions, but with his own problematic family history, had projected his fears onto our relationship. Linda, wanting to be a good wife, had tried to adopt a model of independence that was not natural for her. And I, feeling attacked, had reacted in an extreme way. Now I understand that the problem was never that Linda depended too much on me or that I was too protective. The problem was that we had never spoken clearly about what kind of relationship we wanted to have as an adult mother and daughter. We had operated based on unexpressed assumptions and expectations until the pressure exploded in the most painful way possible. The family therapy we started after the reconciliation has helped us a lot to understand these dynamics. At first, I was embarrassed to go to therapy. I felt that admitting we needed professional help was acknowledging that we had failed as a family. But the psychologist, a very wise woman named Dr. Martinez, helped us see that seeking help was actually a sign that we cared enough about each other to want to improve. "Healthy families are not those that never have problems," she told us. "They are the ones that know how to solve problems when they appear." In the sessions, we learned to express our needs directly without accusations or defensiveness. Linda learned to say, "I need more space to make this decision," instead of "my mom is too meddlesome." I learned to say, "I feel excluded when you don't tell me important things," instead of assuming they didn't want me in their lives. Daniel also participated in several sessions, and it was revealing to hear him talk about his family of origin. His parents had really been very cold and distant, and he had grown up believing that was the normal way for a family to be. When he saw the closeness between Linda and me, he interpreted it as something unhealthy because he had no reference for what a genuinely united family was. "Now I understand that there are different types of families," he told us in one of the sessions, "and that Linda's family being different from mine doesn't mean it's wrong." These months have also helped me to better understand my own story. For years, I thought that being a good mother meant sacrificing everything for my children, being available 24/7, solving all their problems before they had to face them. But now I realize that this style of mothering, although it comes from love, does not necessarily prepare children for adult life. The irony is that by trying to protect Linda so much from the difficulties of life, I didn't give her the opportunity to develop her own strength and problem-solving skills. And by making my entire life an extension of my children's lives, I didn't show them the example of a woman who also had her own identity and her own dreams. My cousin Letitia was right when she told me that sometimes God closes one door to open another. The humiliation at the wedding was the door that closed on my life as a traditional, completely devoted mother. But that experience opened the door to a version of myself that I didn't know existed, a woman who can be a mother without losing herself in the process. This morning, while I was finishing sewing one of the Sweet 16 dresses, I thought about the girl who is going to wear this dress at her party. Her parents have probably worked for months to save the money for her celebration. Her mother is probably as excited as she is nervous. The whole family is probably involved in the preparations. I wondered if that mother is experiencing the preparation for the Sweet 16 as I experienced the preparation for Linda's wedding. With so much love, but also with so much self-imposed pressure for everything to be perfect. I wondered if that mother knows that she can love her daughter deeply without making her daughter's happiness her only source of personal happiness. These are lessons I wish I had learned sooner, but I also understand that everyone has their own process and their own time to grow. At 62, I am learning things about myself that I didn't know at 50, and that doesn't seem sad or late to me. It seems hopeful. It means it's never too late to evolve, to discover new facets of who you are. Last Friday, Susan came to visit me, as she has been doing frequently for months. We have developed a deeper friendship since everything that happened. She was a witness to my deepest pain, but she has also been a witness to my transformation. "You know what impresses me most about you," she said, as we had coffee in the kitchen. How you managed to turn the worst experience of your life into the best opportunity for growth." "It wasn't something I did consciously," I said. "At first I was just trying to survive the pain." "But then you made decisions. You decided not to remain a victim. You decided to look for solutions. You decided to forgive, but also to demand respect." She was right. At some point in the process, I stopped being a woman to whom something terrible had been done and became a woman who was creating something new from that terrible experience. "Aren't you afraid to go to Florida for 3 months?" Susan asked me. "A little," I admitted. "But it's an exciting fear, not a paralyzing fear." "What's the difference?" "Paralyzing fear is when you feel that something bad will happen if you change. Exciting fear is when you feel that something good will happen if you dare to change." "And what do you expect to happen in Florida?" "I don't know exactly, and that's what's exciting." It's true I don't have specific expectations for my adventure at the beach. I'm not looking for a new permanent life or running away from my current life. I'm simply going to discover what it feels like to live in a different place, work with different people, wake up to different sounds. Mrs. Patricia, with whom I have spoken several times by phone to finalize the details, has told me a little about life in Florida. She says it's a quiet but vibrant place where there are people from many parts of the world, where you can walk on the beach in the afternoons and watch spectacular sunsets. "It will be a very enriching experience for you," she told me. "We have seen several women from Mexico who come to work temporarily and end up staying because they discover a new version of themselves. I don't think I will stay permanently. My life, my family, my roots are here. But I am excited about the possibility of discovering that new version of myself that Mrs. Patricia talks about. Yesterday, while I was packing some things for the trip, Linda arrived by surprise with a small suitcase. "It's a gift," she said. It was a beautiful suitcase, navy blue, with wheels and perfect compartments for a 3-month trip. "Thank you, honey. It's beautiful. I wanted you to have something new for your new adventure." "Aren't you sad that I'm leaving?" Linda thought for a moment. "A little, but I'm also proud." Proud. Yes, proud to have a mom who is so brave, who at 62 dares to live new adventures. Me brave? Super brave. I don't know if at your age I would dare to go alone to an unknown place to work with people I don't know. The word brave resonated with me a lot. For so many years I had seen myself as a woman who did what she had to do, not what she wanted to do. I had seen myself as someone who reacted to circumstances, not as someone who created circumstances. But now Linda was seeing me as a brave woman who makes bold decisions. "You know what?" I said. "I think you're right. I think I am brave." "You were always brave, Mom. It's just that before you used your bravery to protect us, now you're using it to protect your own dreams." That observation from Linda stayed on my mind all day. It was true. I had been brave all my life. Brave enough to work double shifts when Robert was sick. Brave enough to raise 2 children practically alone after he died. Brave enough to sell my work tools to fulfill Linda's dream. But I had used that bravery exclusively for others. Now, for the first time, I was using my bravery for myself. And it felt different. It felt like an act of self-love that I had been postponing for decades. This morning, 2 weeks before my trip, I woke up with a sense of peace that I hadn't experienced in a long time. A peace that comes from knowing that you are exactly where you should be, doing exactly what you should be doing. I prepared my coffee, sat in the kitchen to review my orders, and realized that I no longer have that constant sense of urgency that accompanied me for so many years. I no longer feel like I have to be available for emergencies that may never come. I no longer feel that my value as a person depends on how much others need me. Now I know that I am valuable simply for existing, for being Sarah Jimenez, for having 62 years of experiences, lessons, joys, and pains that have made me who I am today. And who I am today is a woman who can be a mother without losing herself, who can love deeply without clinging desperately, who can give without becoming exhausted, who can receive without feeling guilty. The phone rang while I was sewing. It was Linda. "Mom, do you have time to talk?" "Of course, honey. What's up?" "Nothing bad. I just wanted to hear your voice and tell you that yesterday, Daniel and I were talking about how much you've changed in these months." "Changed how?" "You seem more light, as if a weight has been lifted off your shoulders. And that's a good thing. It's a very good thing. It's as if you're finally free to be yourself. Free to be myself." What a simple and revolutionary concept at the same time. "Linda, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you regret what happened at the wedding?" There was a long pause. "I regret the way it happened, but not the final result." "What do you mean?" "I regret hurting you in such a cruel way, but I don't regret that we got to where we are now. I think we needed to go through that crisis to become the family we are today." It was an interesting perspective. The worst experience of my life as a mother had resulted in the best version of our family relationship. "Do you regret it?" Linda asked me. "I regret the pain we all felt. But as you say, I don't regret the result. You know what I like most about our relationship now?" "What?" "That I can admire you as a woman, not just love you as a mom." Those words went straight to my heart. For years I had put my entire identity into being a good mother. It had never occurred to me that my children could also admire me as a woman, as an independent person with her own qualities and achievements. "What do you admire about me?" "Your bravery to start over, your ability to forgive without forgetting, your determination to create the life you want instead of settling for the life you were given." After hanging up with Linda, I sat in the kitchen thinking about everything we had talked about. In 6 months, we had gone from being a fractured family to being a family that knows and appreciates each other in a completely new way. And that had been possible because we all had the courage to change, to admit our mistakes, to try different ways of relating to each other. This afternoon, I will finish packing for my trip. Tomorrow, Linda and Michael are coming for dinner to say goodbye. It's a temporary farewell full of excitement and expectation, very different from the permanent and painful farewell we almost had 6 months ago. In 2 weeks, I will be waking up to the sound of the sea, working in a new house, meeting new people, living an adventure I never thought I would have at my age. And in 3 months, I will return home to my family, to my work, but I will return as a more complete version of myself. A version that knows she can be a mother without sacrificing her identity, that she can love without clinging, that she can give without getting exhausted. Today I know that the greatest gift a mother can give her children is not a life without difficulties, but the example of a woman who knows how to create happiness and meaning in her own life. And that is exactly what I hope to continue doing for many years to come. Sometimes the greatest new beginning is the silence we choose to keep until we find our own voice. Other times it's the noise we make when we finally decide that our happiness matters too.